getting it. Okay, so the Torah says, Vayeitzei Yaakov mi Be'ersheva vayelech Haran. That Yaakov left Be'ersheva and he went to Haran. So everybody wants to understand, like, what is it? Why do you have to say Vayeitzei and Vayelech? If he's Vayeitzei, he obviously is going somewhere. And we know that also in the previous parsha, it says that he left. So why does it have to tell us that? So the Beis Halevi says because there are two ways that a person can leave a place. A person can leave a place, Vayeitzei, he can go somewhere. Sorry, he can leave a place aimlessly. He can just leave. Vayeitzei Yaakov mi Be'ersheva. But that wasn't Yaakov. Yaakov, no matter what he did, whenever he went anywhere, he always went with purpose. So Vayeitzei Yaakov mi Be'ersheva, but Vayelech Harana. He also made sure that he was going to a place. Where was he going? He was going to Haran. So that's one way of understanding it. The Rashi wants to say that Vayeitzei Vayelech is because there's a when a tzaddik leaves a place, so it leaves a void and a vacuum of the kedusha, of the sanctity, of the impact that person makes, and because of that kedusha, so therefore the Torah is emphasizing that. The Netziv, on the other hand, tells us, and I think I like this Netziv because he fills in a gap that we don't know. What happened to Yaakov? We know that Yaakov left Beersheba. We know that he's going to go to Haran, but we're told in the Midrashim somewhere that in between the leaving to Beersheba and the going to Haran, he spent 14 years in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. And the Netziv wants to say, where does that come from? Well, how do you know that? How do you know that he spent this time in the yeshiva? He says it's in those words. Vayeitzei Yaakov mi Beersheba. Yaakov left Beersheba. And then there's what's called an et nachta. An et nachta is under the word Beersheva. And an et nachta is a pause. And then it says Vayelech Haran. And then he went to Haran. So the Netziv wants to say that the fact that there are two clauses in that pasuk is indicative that he left Beersheba, he went somewhere, stopped in that place, and then from that place he went to Haran. And where did he stop? He stopped at the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. Okay. Vayifka b'makom vayelin sham, and he comes to this place, makom, the place. This is always going to be a space of holiness, because we don't really know which makom this was. So the only other time is that we have this concept of hamakom at this point in time in the Torah is Har Moriah, so it must be there. Vayifga b'makom, that's what Rashi tells us. Vayalin sham, and he lies down and he sleeps there. Kiva Hashem, why? Because it's going to be a nightfall. Vayikach me'avnei hamakom, and he takes the stones of the place. Vayasei merashotav, and he takes these stones and he puts them merashotav by his head. Vayishkav b'makom ahu, and he sleeps in this place. And then he has this dream. Now Rashi tells us, like, there's this strange midrash. The midrash, the question is, what did he do with these stones? How did he put them down, and why did he put them down? So the Netziv says very simply, he put them down. He wanted to be elevated a bit off the ground so that no insects or anything could come to him, as we would have like a normal mattress. So he made himself a little bed, and he made a bed, and he lay on the bed, and he had one by his head that's a little bit higher than the other stones. And in doing that, he was reasonably comfortable. You know, it wasn't CD posturpedic, but maybe that was the CD of the day. So he has this. He's lying down there. That's according to the way. And the Tzivah says very practical, very simple. But it comes along Rashi, and Rashi says, "Asan kamin marzev saviv l'rosho." What he does is that he makes it in a shape around his head. Why? Sheyara mipnei chayot rot, because he's worried about wild animals. So he puts it in a way that will protect his head in the event of wild animals coming. And then what happens is the stones, it's like a crazy midrash, right? The stones start arguing with each other. The one says, I want the tzaddik to rest his head on me. And the other one says, I want the tzaddik to rest his head on me. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? Asan HaKadosh Baruch Hu even achat. Hashem makes it into one stone. Sorry, you do it later, please. Makes it into one stone. That's what it means later on where it says that he took the stone that he put on his head. So according to Rashi says it starts with stones, and later on in the Torah, after he's had the dream and he wakes up, he takes the stone single that he had used by his head, and he makes that into a matzeva, into some type of place in which to bring an offering. So Rashi says, why does it start with stones and end with stone in the singular? Because they were all arguing amongst each other. They all wanted the tzaddik to have his head on them, and Hashem made a miracle that it became one, and therefore there's only one stone. So that's a very difficult midrash, because what on earth is going on? Why is that such an issue? Because how do stones have an argument? I mean, from where do you get that stones who don't have da'at, they don't have any capacity to speak, they don't have capacity to argue, they don't have capacity for anything. So what is going on that the stones are arguing with each other, and the argument is on such a high level? They're saying, we want this tzaddik to rest his head on me. So the stone A is saying, I want the tzaddik. Stone B is saying, I want the tzaddik. What does Hashem do? He makes them all one, and then everybody's happy. So there's a Maharal that is just so beautiful, because the Maharal says, what's going on here? Why would it be that these stones would be arguing with each other? Where does it come from that the stones are arguing with each other? And he says the most beautiful thing. He says, you need to understand that when we look at Yaakov, what we don't realize is who this Yaakov is. Yaakov, according to the Maharal, the way he explains it in such a beautiful way, is that Yaakov is, if there's a pasuk that refers to Yaakov as Kadosh, as totally holy. And if Yaakov is totally holy, then says the Maharal that we have to understand that in a place of total Kedusha, in a place of total holiness, in a place of total spirituality, there cannot be chiluk, there cannot be separation. Because that's what total spirituality means. That's why we say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu means that it is totally connected with everything. So too, as he says here, Yaakov haya kadosh v'nivdal. Yaakov was kadosh, sanctified, and he was separated from the rest of the world. V'davar ze yadua lemaskilim be'inyan Yaakov. And everybody knows, understands that was about how Yaakov was. V'davar shu kadosh v'nivdal, and the thing that is kadosh and nivdal, holy and separated, hu davar shelo yitchalek. It's something that cannot have separation within it. That's the definition of Kedusha. Kedusha will always mean a strive towards coming together. Just by the way, I saw a beautiful idea on Rivka, who is the mother of Esav and Yaakov, and Rivka is the one who causes like this rift between Esav and Yaakov. So her name is the Shoresh is a Reish Bet Kuf, and Reish Bet Kuf is the thing that holds oxen together. I think it's called the span. It holds the oxen together. So her very essence is one to bring things together, and her challenge was to separate them. Yaakov is the ultimate togetherness. He's the ultimate child of Rivka. He's the one that is so singular in his ability to perceive everything that he is the kadosh. He's holy, and so therefore, it's not that the stones are arguing so much, but rather the way the Maharal explains it is that they don't feel comfortable being separated with under the head of this one who is so holy. And so therefore they're arguing with each other, not about that the one who necessarily wants the head on the head, but rather they're saying that space that is being taken should be where I am, but not on a separation. So therefore, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu make them? HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't handle that because of a tzaddik. There is merivah, there's dissension, there's machlokas, and all of those things. And so therefore, what does he do? He makes them one. Because what's the value of seichel? What is the value of Yaakov? Yaakov's head, they want his head on the cushion. The value of Yaakov is his seichel, the ability to have a broad vision of things. And a broad vision of things, the way the Maharal explains, means what? Is that it's mitztaref el ribu apratim. It's able to find the connection on so many different and separate things that they can all come and become one thing. And so therefore the stones become one because Yaakov is Kadosh. Because Kedusha doesn't really tolerate machlokas. And I think that is such an important thing for us to understand. That's what we're really striving for. When we speak about the oneness of the Jewish people, that we're goy echad ba'aretz, when we speak about all this concept of the unity and all that unity can only come through one space. And it has to be the space of Kedusha, of sanctity, of a space of trying to connect to a much higher level and a much higher value. And that's where Yaakov sits. And that's why later on, when Yaakov is about to die, and he sees his children, and this is the Midrash says that, so it's difficult Midrash to understand. The Midrash says that he sees his children and he's worried that there's machlokas amongst them. And if there's machlokas amongst them, he knows then the people of Israel, Am Yisrael, cannot be what they need to be. And he looks at them, and the Midrash records, he says, what's going on? I'm not giving my Ruach HaKodesh. It must be because there's no unity. And they declare, Shema Yisrael, hear Yisrael, I Yisrael, him, Yaakov, yourself, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. No, we're all connected to the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's where the Midrash says, he whispers, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Lamed, a great recognition and thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because there's still a maintenance of everybody being one. The Maharal points out that where do you find where there's disunity? You find there's disunity the more there's a focus on the materialism, and that's why the Midrash speaks about the stones, because that's the ultimate. In materialism is the sand of the earth and the rocks of the earth, which theoretically have no feelings, have no ability to think or speak. But then when it comes to a tzaddik, they want to be in one, which I thought was quite an interesting and important thing for us to understand. In understanding who Yaakov was, because we see Yaakov as this person, but we don't really understand that he is the highest level of all the avot. That's why it's his face that is on the Kisei HaKovod. That's on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's throne. It's his face that is there because he is the representation of the echadness, of the oneness of this world. And so therefore he's on the throne of Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Let's stop there for today. Sorry, I was a little bit late and it was difficult with the tech, but please God, we'll continue tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, everybody.